just like the heroes of Cable Street. No pass around, no pass around. We fought the fascists to defeat, and we'll do it again tomorrow, just like they did in the Second World War. No pass around, no pass around. We booted the Nazis out the door, and we'll do it again tomorrow. Victory, victory.
I was in high school discovering punk rock and alternative ways of living in a world that so often demanded we stay on the prefabricated path paved for us. But I'd never been one to follow the crowd. And so when I heard the songs A New England, Help Save the Youth of America, and Waiting for the Great Leap Forward on a mixtape made by a friend with far superior musical taste than me at that time, it immediately resonated with me both politically and personally. The legendary English singer-songwriter has been performing for more than 40 years, blending folk, punk, and protest music with political and romantic themes. From Light as a Riot with Spy vs. Spy through Chief and Nail, Bragg's music spans countries and generations, offering hope, anger, and resilience to those looking to create change. A longtime left-wing activist, he has testified before a commission that debated reforming the House of Lords. He also founded Jail Guitar Doors, an organization that gives musical instruments to prisoners. His book, Roots, Radicals, and Rockers, tells the story of the music genre skiffle. In his most recent book, and tonight's featured selection, The Three Dimensions of Freedom, Bragg prescribes the antidotes to rising global authoritarianism. A review in The Guardian reads, "The scoundrels of the piece are many and range from the predictable, capitalism, globalization, neoliberalism, to the slightly less so, algorithms. Our sole defense," Bragg urges, in prose that has a quiet musicality, is to embrace freedom in all three of its dimensions: liberty, equality, and accountability. Tonight, Billy Bragg will be interviewed by Ian Zolinor, a musician and the host of WXPN Radio's Folk Show. Please give a warm welcome to Billy Bragg.
Well, hello.
Hey, Ian, how are you?
Good, good. Hey, everybody. So, I don't want to blow anyone's mind right off the bat here, but for the past 40-some years, you've been known primarily as a musician, not a writer. Your last album was a great album about trains. Your last book was about skiffle type of music. So why this book, The Three Dimensions of Freedom, and why right now?
Well, books, can I have a bit more vocals in my fallback? I think you could turn me up a little bit so I don't have to shout and lose my voice. I've got to do some music this week. Turn me down a little bit and I can talk softly then, that would be lovely. If you're up there in control, that would be bad. Oh, that's lovely, thank you. Basically, the great thing about books is, unlike records, you can still sell them for $14.99. And you don't have to take a load of drugs to make them. So, it's good all round, basically. Why this book? Why now? My publishers asked me if I would be interested in taking part in a new series of polemical essays that they're creating favour and favour. They're inviting musicians and artists to write about social issues. And I had, in 2018, I've been invited to address the staff of the Bank of England, our central bank at home. And the issue I chose to talk to them about was accountability, specifically with regard to the economy, because they are tasked by a government with distributing money to retail banks in a process that we refer to as quantitative easing. I don't know if you have it in America. But the general idea is that they give the money to the banks and the banks lend it to people and that helps the economy grow. But what has actually happened since the crash in 2008 is the banks have been using it to buy back their own shares and shore up their bottom line. So this Bank of England can't do anything about this because it has no agency in the process. It's told to do this. So I thought I'd go along and make a case for a more accountable economy. And that seemed to go over pretty well. They took me downstairs and showed me the gold room, where all the gold is kept, which was quite staggering thing to see. And yeah, I sort of thought perhaps I could refine those arguments a little better into a polemical essay.
You mentioned accountability, in that sense, accountability economically, financially. That happens to be one of the three dimensions of freedom that you go on in more detail about in the book. Could you just briefly say what the three dimensions are and
How they relate?
a definition of them and how they relate to each other?
There is a tendency over the last few years to regard freedom of speech as the definition of freedom. The fact that you can say whatever you want to say, whenever you want to say it, to whoever you want to say it, with no comeback. That means that you're free. Now, if that is true, then there is no higher exemplar of freedom than your president's Twitter feed. The difference between liberty and license, I think, is significant. In London, the BBC, outside of their new offices, have a statue of one of their former employees, George Orwell. And the quote they have chosen to accompany this, carved into the wall of their building, is a quote from the planned preface to Animal Farm, which I actually quote in the book. And it's this, it says, if liberty is to mean anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they don't want to hear. I'm not comfortable with that. People don't want to hear that the Holocaust didn't happen. People don't want to hear that all Muslims are terrorists. That's license. That is not liberty. Ultimately, liberty has to be more than just your ability to say whatever you want to say. So a second dimension you need is equality. And that involves respecting the views of other people and listening to them, giving them the opportunity to express their view and responding to them respectfully. But even that still allows for everybody to go around shouting 2 + 2 = 5. So you need something else that straightens the discourse and allows us to talk to one another and to deal with one another in good faith. And that's where accountability comes in. Because I would argue that liberty without equality is nothing more than privilege. But liberty without accountability is the most dangerous type of freedom, and that is impunity. And you have a president, and we have a prime minister who've acted with impunity all of their lives. And now they're in the centre of our national discourse, acting with no accountability whatsoever. Our prime minister on a plane to Washington DC yesterday was asked 6 times about when he was Mayor of London, some money he gave to a woman who was a friend of his, who he may possibly even have been in a relationship with. He refused to answer 6 times, the journalist, just brushed it aside. To be able to do that, I think, in a democracy, that's deeply troubling. So what I'm trying to do with the book is to set some parameters by which to hold those in power to account, but also on another level to give us some framework in which to conduct a social discourse that's based on deliberation rather than disagreement for the sake of it. So
we have these 3 dimensions: liberty, equality, and accountability. And to sort of go through it a little bit, in your book, you relate liberty a lot to economic conditions. Liberty can be seen as freedom from government control, government intervention, regulation. Freedom from regulation can be a sort of liberty. And then also liberty could be freedom of agency, and within economic conditions being able to make your decisions and move about freely. So can you talk about sort of the factors that led up to the situation that we're in now? You get a lot of history about Keynes and Hayek and people who subscribe to those philosophies, yet we're in this situation, you know?
Yeah.
Plenty of resources available.
One of the key aspects of the neoliberal economic model that we've been living under for the last 40 years is the notion that if the markets are left to their own devices, everything will be okay. That is both a terrible license to economists, but it's also a complete cop-out for politicians. I once did a live TV show in the UK, an afternoon show, standing in the wings waiting to come on and play a song. A Conservative minister was being interviewed in front of me live on camera, and they asked him if he was considering raising the allowance that the government gives to mothers with children, we call it children's allowance. And he said, completely straight-faced, we'll have to see what the bond markets think about that. Now, I don't remember voting for no bond markets, and I told him so in the elevator on the way out. And to such an extent that his young female minder was stifling a laugh that I should get in his face. She clearly enjoyed it, he didn't. But he shouldn't have gotten away from it. But the point of this being is that for those who believe that authoritarianism is regulation, they have completely got the wrong end of the stick. Authoritarianism arises when regulations are so lax that those in power can act with impunity. You know, the only way to have an economic system that runs for the benefit of the majority of people is to have it heavily regulated, clearly regulated, to ensure that the human impulse for greed is not allowed to run wild. But over the last 40 years, we've not only allowed that impulse to run wild, but we've also allowed it to run beyond the confines of our own national borders. And that has had severe economic repercussions for people working particularly in the traditional industry. To such an extent that within a globalised economy, those people have been denied the agency that they had when economics was more prescribed by national borders. And this lack of agency is partly economic, it's also partly to do with the fact that the electoral system in my country and in yours doesn't ensure that everybody's vote counts, it's not proportional. So consequently, if you don't vote for the party that wins, your vote goes to the bin. Where I live in West Dorset in England, the Conservative Party have been in power as the MP since 1886. Where I grew up in East London, in Barking, the Labour Party have been in power there since 1931 when the borough was created out of Essex. So since my father was a child. And please don't tell me there aren't any Tories in Barking because I'm related to some of them. So, you know, it's equally unfair to them as it is unfair to me in West Dorset. So that sense of lack of agency is real, but misdirected because it very often expresses itself in anti-immigrant feeling. I'm afraid those in power have used tropes such as political correctness to deflect criticism away from them who actually have the power to change the system and towards the most marginalised in our society, the poor, those who rely on benefits, and those who've recently arrived in our country. So I think it's this lack of agency that is at the root of the rise of Trump and certainly of Brexit in my country, and that greater accountability in the economy and in our political sphere is a way to begin to address that.
So, in this idea of agency and the freedoms that should be allotted to all citizens, they're all, in your book, sort of victims of the failures of neoliberal philosophy and other philosophies that people have tried over the years and generations that have not served us. And there was a quote that stood out. It was in response to the results of the 2016 election here in the States, I believe. you said centrists were shocked to discover that for a majority of people, the smooth running of an economy that has excluded them and rewarded others is not their highest priority. Do you think that centrists since then have learned their lesson after 2 years of Trump?
I'm afraid not. I mean, it's actually exactly the same for Brexit as well. I mean, the similarities between the symptoms of Brexit and the symptoms of Trumpism are very, very similar. And you'll know, if you watch the news, that we're not the only people who are undergoing these traumatic sensibilities. Globalisation has had this effect wherever it's been implemented. I think in trying to get control of the agenda in my country, there have been a series of votes against the central government. In the 2010 election, our system, which we call first past the post, it's designed to ensure that whoever wins gets a working majority. That's the big plus of it. The negative is that it chucks your vote in the bin if you don't. The majority of us actually get our votes chucked in the bin, but it always gives us a majority. It didn't. It gave us the first peacetime coalition government. And that's happened again in 2017. These are votes against Westminster. People are angry. The Scottish referendum nearly went to independence, and the election of Jeremy Corbyn was also part of that aspect, because that was a vote against the Labour Party centrist Westminster way of doing things. And this phenomenon, I think, is something that we in the UK we're seeing people who want significant change, but the system, the centrist control system, is unable to deliver it. And, you know, whatever you thought about Hillary Clinton, I'm sure she'd have made a fine president. She was not a change candidate. She represented the continuation of the economic model of the past decades. And I think that really mitigated against her. Obviously, the kind of change that Trump has brought has been drastically different from the sort of thing I'm talking about. There is an element in Brexit, and maybe, I don't know enough about it, but maybe you detect it here, that there's a sensibility for some people that if they can't get the change they want, they will willingly vote for chaos, rather than put back in the same people they feel have served them well.
Yeah, you had a good word for that. I see a good phrase for voting for chaos. You say these people are prepared to vote willingly for damn a lot of your chaos. Yeah,
that's what's gone down with Brexit. Really, the problems that people talked about that led them to vote Brexit were all things that could be resolved by Westminster, not by Brussels. And that Brussels became. I mean, the thing is that Brussels is a good scapegoat, because the implication is it's not our fault. We didn't vote for these arseholes at Westminster. Of course you did. Don't be stupid, you know. I mean, I've been arguing today with someone online about it's too hot to walk around. I'll get fried. I walked around all day trying to find a haircut. Every barber in Philadelphia is closed. I didn't know this, so I came back. And I had a bit of a run-in last night with some members, last week with a member of the intellectual dark web, who are a secret organisation who are dedicated to fighting political correctness wherever they find it entices. And this person was basically arguing the Great Replacement theory with me, which is a racist notion that those in power are actively bringing immigrants into the country to replace the indigenous white population. And I was trying to explain to her that the waves of immigration, certainly into my country, have been part of free market capitalism. There have been people wanting cheap labour, there have been people able to do that because unions have been pushed back, and there have been people wanting to make cheap stuff so people can buy. So those people who are complaining about this great replacement theory are the ones who have benefited from it, because they've got the cheap labour and they've got the cheap goods. But as with many people arguing that they're a bit bulletproof, so it bounces off a bit. But maybe it's not the best forum, but who else will I do it my forum? Take choice. Watch the telly. Why not sharpen my arguments with dealing with online hecklers?
This intellectual dark web, you speak a lot about it in the equality section of your book, one of the dimensions of freedom. These are people that claim to be underdogs, claim to be marginalized, but every metric says that they are not that at all. And they're followed by millions and millions of people, more than, in a lot of cases, any mainstream outlet. Why do we need to protect their right to say whatever they want when they won't necessarily return that
Well, it's not that we need to protect their right, they have that right, and we have to respect that right. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to control the terms of the debate. And they do that by using words which delegitimize your points. One of their favourite phrases is, as I'm sure you know, political correctness. Now, political correctness doesn't actually exist. There's no theorists up in Chicago writing about it. There's no people marching on the streets with banners demanding more political correctness. There's no party, the National Party of Political Correctness, looking for your vote on the next election. Political correctness is a trope used by reactionaries to police the limits of social change. That's what it's for. And they use that, and they use the term woke in a pejorative way to try to delegitimize the points that you are making. They are trying to control the terms of the debate. And interestingly, one of the things that the new free speech warriors have such disdain for is the idea of safe spaces. Now, safe spaces are also seeking to control the debate, but they are seeking to control the tone of the debate. They're not seeking to control the subjects that can be debated, but they're seeking to control the tone by ensuring that everybody gets a fair hearing, nobody gets shouted down, everybody is treated respectfully, and that people who are just coming on campus to provoke anger are not going to get a platform if they won't accept the house rules. Now, that, I think that's fair. If you were running a bar somewhere and there was some guy came in every night and started a fight, you'd chuck him out, wouldn't you? You wouldn't say, oh, it's his right to come in and start a fight. You wouldn't do that. So, the point being that the great struggle, it seems to me, that underpins all this, and certainly underpins what you Americans refer to as a culture war, is the eternal struggle to decide who gets to write the rules, and more importantly, who gets to break them with impunity. And that's what these guys are policing. They're trying to make sure that they get to write the rules and they get to break them and nobody else gets to break them, especially if they're female or a person of colour or a person of indeterminate gender. They're making sure those people stay in their place, because these guys have been in charge ever since Aristotle, and they're damn well going to stay in charge no matter what things change when anyone votes. So that's the thing we're fighting for: our right to write the rules, and our right to be able to ensure that they don't break them. That's why accountability is what gives freedom its teeth. Without it, it's a great idea, it's a principle, but with it, with accountability, when you can actually hold people to account, then that's when freedom becomes liberation.
You make the distinction between speech that's offensive, which I think everyone in this room has said things that can be construed as offensive, versus speech that's abusive. And there's a line that gets crossed, and I guess who gets to determine what that line is?
Well, personally, in terms of my social media discourse, I feel that the line between offence and abuse is when it becomes personal. When you start making personal comments about someone, I find that's abusive. And I try very hard not to do that. With regard to all of these ideas, accountability, context is everything. Context is everything. There's different types of accountability. There's the one-on-one accountability that we have as individuals talking to each other, whether that be face-to-face or online. We have the right to end the conversation, to walk away, to block. The next level you might call proprietorial accountability. That's the landlord banning you, or Twitter saying you're banned, or the Free Library of Philadelphia saying no, we're not going to have a Holocaust denier come and talk to people. That's still, you can still go and do all that in a car park over the road. You're not being banned, But then there's another level, which perhaps in my country is more easily reached than in here with your First Amendment, and that is the accountability of the state through hate speech. Now, recently, a man was sent to prison in my country for painting on the front door of a recently arrived black family, "No blacks here." Now, I don't think anybody in this room will believe that's freedom of speech. Everyone will recognise that that's hate speech. So in my country, you went to jail, nobody complained about that. So it's on different levels. There's not a one-size-fits-all here. Freedom's always contested. That's the nature of the idea.
Without knowing very well the limits of what's called hate speech in other countries, here in this country, I think by nature it crosses the line to abuse, and hate speech in and of itself is an act of violence. Yet there's Nazis that are allowed to march down public streets and potentially gain support, gain new members, other white supremacist groups as well. And
but others have the right to protest against them, don't they?
yeah, but
others have the right to face them down and show that they're not welcome in this town.
absolutely, and we do. But should they still be allowed to do that, even though the act itself is violent, the act itself is abusive? Rather, the words themselves are violent. The words themselves are abusive.
In my country, a party called the British National Party, who are a classic racist fascist party led by a guy who questioned the veracity of the Holocaust. They have stood in local council and national elections and been vociferously opposed. There was a huge debate about whether the leader should appear on a weekly TV programme on the national channel on the BBC called Question Time, which is like a panel for politicians with an audience about the size that we have here tonight, taking direct questions. And there was a big demonstration to refuse him to go what we call no platforming him. I personally was not in favour of that, because having seen the quality of the British National Party candidate's discourse, I knew that he would look like a complete idiot. And sometimes you just need people to see what a bunch of complete idiots these guys are when you give them any power. In the town I come from, in East London, Barking, when I was growing up, when I left school, there was a Ford factory there. 40,000 people worked in that factory. Now, a tenth of that work there. And as a result, my hometown is exactly one of those places where people no longer feel they have any agency. And in the 1990s, when Tony Blair said we don't have to worry about the white working class, they have no one else to vote for, well, it turned out they did. They voted for the BNP. They voted 12 councillors on a council of 52. In fact, on the council elections, they won every seat they stood in. If they stood a full slate, they'd have taken the council, and they had a 70 million budget over 5 years. In a multi-racial borough, it would have been an absolute disaster. It would have been a disaster. So a lot of us organised, a lot of us got together, the local people, the unions, the anti-racist groups, the Labour Party, and the Conservatives chipped in as well. And when the election came, the next election came, they were hoping to get another 12 seats to take control of the council. They didn't get another 12 seats, and they lost every seat they had. Because those white working people in my hometown had looked into the face of racist fascism and seen it for what it was. And I trusted working people to be able to tell when racists are coming to their town and putting neighbour against neighbour. I think they see those people marching with their Nazi flags and their Confederate flags, And I think, why are these guys supporting the losers? You know, what about those who won these wars? You know, what about us? You know, they're cosplay Nazis. You know? My father was right when he told me when we were young, we used to have a lot of trouble with skinheads, racist skinheads. He said to me, you really want to beware of the fascists in the three-piece suits. And they're the people we really have to keep our eye out for. I remember racist statements over the last couple of years, and you know, we've been not really taking it that seriously. And I think that's a mistake. It really is a mistake. And the night after Stormzy, who's a black grime artist, headlined a Glastonbury Festival, it's a really big deal for grime to headline at Glastonbury, and everybody recognised that this was a moment when a marginalised community, young black men, will come to the centre of our culture at Glastonbury, which is our biggest pop culture event. A racist website that promotes the Great Replacement Theory, called Morgoth's Review, posted a video attacking Stormzy, and somehow it ended up on Morrissey's website 3 hours after it had been posted. Someone mentioned this to me in a tweet, and I was like shocked. And so I waited for some response in the press to this. None was there coming. And so after a week, I thought to myself, you know, I'm going to have to make a point of this myself. And my argument isn't about what Morrissey said. Morrissey has the right to say whatever he likes. But he doesn't have the right to say whatever he likes and not be held accountable for it. My complaint was with the press that weren't holding him to account, but weren't drawing attention to the points that he was making and to the way that he was abusing his platform. So I did upset some of his fans a little bit, but you know, such is the process out there. And it's just very, very disappointing for those of us who love the Smiths, myself included, that someone who once so resonated with outsiders and the marginalised, who really stood up for those people who were looked down upon by mainstream pop culture, should turn to marginalise others. It's hugely disappointing. You know, we live in a time where there is like a war on empathy, where anyone who expresses any compassion for anyone outside their own perceived group is attacked as being politically correct or virtue signaling or whatever. And I find this deeply troubling because as a musician, not a political musician, but just as a musician, empathy is the currency of what I do. The power that music has is not to change the world. Sorry folks, I've tried my hardest. Music has no agency. The only people who have agency are the audience. I've known that for a long time. But music does have a power, and that's why we all want to believe it can change the world, because it can change our mood, it can change our feelings. It has an amazing power. But the power is the power of empathy, the power to be able to make you feel emotions that you've never felt firsthand, perhaps, or feel for someone who you have never met. You know, you might hear music that in a different language, you don't even understand the language, but it moves you in some way, and as a result, you feel respect for the person who made that music and the culture that it comes from. And I'll go further to say that music has also a solidarity to it as well. That you may have a song that you have invested deep emotions. There might be a song that articulates things you can't say yourself. We all have songs like that, you know. And let's say it's Adele who's got your song, and you go to see her, and she's singing it, and you're singing it, and 2,000, 5,000 other people are singing it. Whatever emotions you've invested in that are accepted by everybody in the room. You feel as if you're not alone because you see everybody else is moved by this moment. That emotional solidarity is incredibly valuable in a society that atomizes discourse. You know, that's why music is cheap as chips now. You get it for nothing, but people still want to come to gigs because there's something you can't get online at a gig. It's a form of community. It's why they sing in church. It's why they sing at football in my country. because they're all, football, your team wins, everyone is experiencing the same emotion. They need some way to express that. They need some way to show, supercharge that feeling. And that solidarity you get of all chanting the name of your team together, it's a very, very powerful emotion, you know? And it's relatively harmless. You know, at the end of it, you all go up, you know, which good, I mean, it's good because, you know, that kind of thing can be used in a negative way. It's relatively harmless. But it is, we have a deep emotional need for those connections, and that's the power that music has. So, to see someone using it to divide people, particularly someone who's previously done the good work that Morrissey did with the Smiths, I find it very, very, as a fan, I'll be honest with you, I find it heartbreaking.
At this point, we're going to open it up to you audience members. If you have any questions, please raise your hands and we'll come out with a microphone. Yes, here.
Thank you. I love what you said about music when you walked in. Got the longest applause I've ever heard here. So you really brought us together.
Thank you.
I'm from Germany, and many Americans, I've been in America now for a number of years, don't believe that anything like Nazi Germany could ever happen here because we are so democratic and we are so great and we know what we are doing and so on. And now I can see, when I watch Fox News, I watch it every night. I always have a bucket right next to me so I can it is so dangerous. And when the Prime Minister from India came yesterday, that whole stadium erupted with carefully selected Indian business people who live in the United States now. And this man is so convincing. I'm not talking about the Indian Prime Minister here. So he talked and got that whole Indian audience on his side, and suddenly he was very friendly towards foreigners because their money, it works. And there is something so dangerous in the language being used now. And I know it, maybe it's politically incorrect to say that, but at times I feel like living in Nazi Germany here. When I hear the language that is so highly persuasive, and I was wondering whether you have found a way of sharing with people what they can do to get their antennas up so they don't fall for it.
Yeah. Well, what I'm trying to do in the book is trying to offer a framework to look at both the rise of what you're referring to, the rise of authoritarianism, but also to how we deal with one another in our social media discourse, how we work. And I think that at some point, I mean, I don't believe that the argument is a left or right argument. I do spend time in the book critiquing neoliberal capitalism, but I don't believe fundamentally that freedom is a left or right wing concept. It has to be available to everyone. We on the left have to be as open to accountability as everybody else. But somewhere we have to draw a line and say enough is enough. And I think accountability is the place where we have to sharpen our spears and put our shields together and say on this line and no further. And that's unfortunately over the last few years that line has been missed regularly in the United States, and it's starting to slide in the UK as well. I'm not sure we are quite on that slippery slope as far as perhaps you feel we are. And I think that the lesson from history is so clear. But certainly these are more contentious times than any I've lived in. From the 1980s when it felt society was fighting against one another, I think we're in much more dire straits now, I'm afraid. Anyone else sort of there?
Hello, Billy.
Oh, I think.
How are you? My name is Harris. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm a music lover as such. I've really enjoyed your music. I hope you'll indulge me for a second if I change the subject a little bit.
Of course.
There was another artist from Great Britain that I was really in love with. I found all her records, but I never got to see her live. She died very young, a tragic death. Would you spend just a minute and tell me a little bit about Kirsty MacColl?
Yeah, of course, I'll be happy to talk about this. She's a really wonderful She's a very wonderful person. I mean, to work with, she was a real pleasure. In the studio, she had an incredible, first of all, she had an incredible voice. singing voice, but she also had an incredible technique. If you was doing a vocal overdub, she would more or less take control of the session, tell the sound man where to put the microphone, tell him what she was going to do. If the mic was like this, she'd do one vocal from here, one vocal from there, one vocal from there. She'd tell him how to mix it, and then she'd say, okay, we're all going up the pub, and then she'd make us all go up the pub with her. You know, as a songwriter, I think she was a brilliant songwriter, and I was a huge fan of her music before we met, and she recorded one of my songs, and I owe her that debt that she recorded New England and had a hit just at that moment when I was just on the cusp of getting beyond the John Peel session. She pushed me through there by having a huge hit with New England. I miss her dreadfully as a friend, as a colleague, and I miss hearing her brand new albums that she will put out from time to time.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
A question regarding accountability and empathy here in Gun in Love. Again, welcome back to the United States. Here in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly and sisterly love. Do you have any
I think we say sibling love now, mate.
So that being said, how is it that we can hold each other accountable in love on a personal one-on-one basis? Some might even say, how might we do it so that we are the milkman of human kindness and leave an extra pint?
Yeah.
How might we leave an extra pint?
Mate, if we held each other accountable in love, there'd be no need for singer-songwriters. I'll be out. Love, someone once said, love is a many splendid thing. And, politics is relatively straightforward. But in love, I think you're dealing with, you're into the mystic now, mate. And accountability is comes a poor second to trust, I think, in a relationship. And I think that the thing that we should be, I'm starting to sound like agony on it now, but the things I would prioritise over accountability in a relationship would be trust, consent, and separate bathrooms.
Any more? Yes, sir.
A few minutes ago when you said that you're sorry music's not going to change the world, but it builds that connection with the audience. It reminded me very much of these interviews I've read with comedians where they'd say they don't expect their comedy is going to change the world, but they make the connection. They're interested in being funny and sharing that humor. I'm wondering if you could, address that. I mean, have you performed with comedians?
Well, yeah, I've done gigs with comedians, and I do use quite a bit of comedy in my gigs, strangely enough, because I find that if you can make an audience laugh, you can tell them anything. So I always use a little bit of that to make it. I don't want it to be a lecture on you, but I'll tell you what I'm trying to do. I'm in a very privileged position. When I feel cynical about something, I'll write a song about it, I'll come out here in the dark with you lot, I'll sing the song, everyone claps, I don't feel half so bad about it. So that kind of support I get from the audience on every night, when I come off stage, my activism is supercharged. It's really charged up by the way the audience has responded to the political songs that I've sung. I see my job as trying to send them home with the same feeling, that they also feel their activism is recharged, not necessarily because of what I've said, but because of the solidarity in the room for these ideas.
Time. Place the mic on the guitar. Oh, you're there. You want me to sing on that thing?
No, that
Go for that. I mean, it's bad enough talking like it's a lecture at a gig without standing up. So, I was talking just a second ago about the idea of empathy being the currency of music. That's kind of what this song is about, when it talks about socialism of the heart, something about compassion and empathy.
going upfield, way up on the hillside. I'm going higher than I've ever been before. That's where you'll find me, over the horizon, wading in the river, skin flat of the shore. Dreamed I saw a tree full of angels up on Primrose Hill. I flew with them over the great way till I had seen my fill. Such poverty and misery sure tear my soul apart. I've got a socialism of the heart. I've got a socialism of the heart. I'm going upfield, way up on the hillside. I'm going higher than I've ever been before. That's where you'll find me, over the horizon, wading in the river, reaching back of the shore. The angels asked me how I felt about all I'd seen and heard. They spoke to me a pagan, gave me cause to doubt their word. But they laughed and said it doesn't matter if you help us in our art. You got a socialism of the heart. You got a socialism of the heart. I'm going upfield, way up on the hillside. I'm going higher than I've ever been before. That's where you'll find me, over the horizon, wading in the river, reaching flat of the shore. Their faces shine, they were gone, and I was left alone. And I walked these ancient empire streets till I came tearful to my home. When I woke next morning, I vowed to play my part. I've got a socialism of the heart. I've got a socialism of the heart. That's why I'm going upfield, way up on the hillside. I'm going higher than I've ever been before. That's where you'll find me, over the blue horizon, wading in the river, reaching flat of the shore, reaching flat of the shore, reaching flat of the shore. Gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accepted that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. For the climate is obviously changing, but the fool in the White House says no one's to blame. The times they are a-changing back. Come Mexicans, Muslims, LGBT and Jews. And keep your eyes wide for what's on the news. But President Trump is expressing his views. And I fear that the mob he's inciting will soon break your windows, burn down your schools. The times they are a-changing back. Come mothers and daughters throughout the land. A bunch of old men have come up with a plan. So forget your ambitions, but they've a better idea about how you should be behaving. So get back in the kitchen and button your lip, for the times they are changing back. In the land of the free and the home of the brave, Martin Luther King is spinning in his grave to see a bigoted bully taking the stage. And he calls upon us to be faithful to the ideals he died for in another age. The times they are a-changing back. And the line is drawn, the curtain is cast. The slower now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. Let's hold on to that idea for a moment. And the first one now will later be last, for the times they need a change. Talk about destruction. Don't you know you can count me in, out, be alright, be alright, be alright. See, you got a new solution, well, you know. Well, I'd love to see them fly. You ask for a contribution, well, you know. Well, doing what we can. One money people mind that, hey, I'll tell you, brother, have to wait.